You do have to perform at the races, but at the same time, it's like some people are just born more competitive. I know a running joke in most sports is like the redheaded stepchild is always super aggressive and full of vinegar, to say the least.
Yep.
I was always real nice, just the way my parents raised me, good Southern family. Um, but I didn't like to lose, and I have almost as many second places as Bill Lapoto. One of my rivals growing up was Jet Reynolds, and year after year, I was just so close to winning. We would move up early in the divisions because we were after more, so we would always race together. And man, if he wouldn't just get the upper hand on me by a little bit there at Loretta's or even some of the spring nationals, but we were always just close enough to where it was like, okay, we'll keep moving up together, keep racing together, like it's just making us both better. I said, oh, I need to do this. So sometimes there was overthinking on my department, just because I know they're right. It sounds like the most common answer, like that's how you go faster. But what if I did it like this? What if I did it like that? And so I said, instead of making y'all's mistakes, why don't I make some of my own?
Meet the Guest, Next Chapter, part of the Coach Robb Podcast Network.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Coach Robb Podcast Network, another episode of Meet the Guest Next Chapter. This episode is brought to you by our good friends at HP Development. I I know I say this at nearly at the beginning of every podcast, but I feel like this is Christmas for me. I've watched this young man grow up. I've watched him tear up the nationals at both a amateur level and then diving into the pro side of things. Mr. Caden Braswell, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. Super pumped that Derek was able to put this together. Mr. HP, he did a lot of good stuff for me over the years, and I can't say enough good things about the guy.
Well, and it's ironic because the way that we do the rotation with our partnerships, it just happened to correlate completely accidental that HP would be the sponsor of today's show. And as you said, Derek's helped you out quite a bit. Derek and I have actually spoken a lot about you in regards to the trials and tribulations of motocross, supercross. He and I tease about the fact that the grind is real. And we were talking a little bit before we even started recording. And like you said, that's part of what you miss. I always like to start the show out by kind of getting a little bit of a background in regards to, I would say 90% of the people who listen to this podcast are probably aware of you as an amateur and as a pro. But what is it that has led you to motocross? Like, what do I need to know about your childhood that shaped you to who you are? I consider you a fierce competitor. You're extremely kind and humble off the track. Uh, you put that helmet on and that competitive nature comes out. How do we get to the Caden Braswell that we know today?
My dad used to ride, and so like the love of the sport just it mostly came from him and sharing that with him. I had a really good family. My mom and my dad, they sacrificed a lot for me to go racing around as an amateur. When I was 15, I moved in full time with a trainer, Justin Boyd, and and he was my on the bike and off the bike guy. I learned a lot from him, and he actually took me all the way to pros with my family's support and his support. We did it all together. It was we took it very serious because it is a lot going into it. So I think even from a young age, I realized that the strain it puts on the family. I have three younger siblings and wasn't around for the beginning of their lives as much. Uh, so that was always hard, just because you do, and the family makes a lot of sacrifices, but you do as well. You don't have a normal childhood, which I'm very grateful for. I mean, my mom always says like, what would have been if you had like a normal childhood? But I'm very thankful that the Lord gave me the opportunity to and the family to do it the way we did it. I was around grown-ups, as a child and growing up, so I didn't really relate to kids my age very well. And overall, like even just from a young age, like my life was moto, like day in, day out, moto. Like it's where I put my identity for the longest time.
What age would you say that when you threw your leg over your motorcycle, you're no longer riding your dirt bike, but now you're training? What age would that have been?
Probably 14. 14 was when it really got serious because that was about the time we hit some financial struggles and I needed sponsors' help.
In I think you said you were 15 when you moved in with the trainer full time.
Yes, sir.
So what would you say was the biggest challenge for you as a 15-year-old? Obviously, you're out on your own. Yes, you're living with a full-time trainer. Were you at a facility or were you guys bouncing around to different tracks?
The cool part of that was I got a school scholarship through on track school, and it correlated with GPF, Georgia Practice Facility. And so it made my mom super happy. And I was super blessed as well because, like I said, like I didn't have, a normal childhood. Like I didn't have friends at school. I didn't even go to school. I was homeschooled. And so to have that, like to have a steady place to live and school, like I've had classmates that were, in the same grade as me or even older, and they'd come to GPF to do their schoolwork. And so, like, we lived in a cabin there, and we would, ride in the mornings, and then we'd do school in the afternoon. And we did that for about a year, 2 years when I first got on 250s because I moved up to big bikes when I was pretty young because I was a bigger kid.
When you say bigger, what kind of height and weight were you when you jumped onto the bigger bike?
I was almost 6 foot, and I was 150 pounds coming off the super minis at 14.
Wow. And this is what I think is so interesting. Like we were asking earlier, when I go back to the home network, I go back to the foundation. I mean, the spectators, the fans, we get to see the output. We don't get to see the input. And like we were saying earlier, I'm always intrigued by what, where does that competitive nature come from? You know, I would once again say the majority of our listeners are competitive by nature. We've been riding for years. There's a big difference between being competitive living at home and being competitive in living on your own, especially at 15 years old. What was the biggest challenge for you between you, if I understood you correctly, now you're teaching yourself with homeschool with the help with On Track. You're at a facility, wrenching bikes, I'm assuming, living on your own, cooking your own food. What was that like for you? How challenging was that?
I can't say it was all on my own. My trainer, we would swap meals. We'd swap meals every other night. So I learned a lot of recipes from him and how to cook clean foods. I can say we didn't use salt and pepper for a solid 6 months. I would try to drown everything in ketchup because we'd cook it very safe. It's like that was the home ed part of school because he was also my teacher. He did it all. My trainer, old Justin, he did it all. He was my mechanic, so I didn't have to touch a bike and have to worry about that part. He was the trainer. He'd do the workouts with me, and then he'd punch the stopwatch and keep me in check on my form and stuff. So I had a very personalized training experience with him. He went above and beyond. The seriousness, like or competitive nature side, and I think it comes a little bit from pressure. Uh, you do have to perform at the races, but at the same time, it's like some people are just born more competitive. I know a running joke in most sports is like the redheaded stepchild is always super aggressive and full of vinegar to say the least.
Yep.
I was always real nice, just the way my parents raised me, good Southern family. Um, but I didn't like to lose. I never liked to lose. Wasn't necessarily consequences for losing, other than it was just not a fun ride home. Like, there's nothing to talk about. It's not like, oh, we did so good this weekend. It's more like, why did we drive out here? Like, you got whooped
Mm.
and we drove all the way out here, but you tried hard, so that's cool. Like, my parents were always good about balancing out like the wins and losses. They just wanted to see my effort. They're like, I just want to see you give your best. And we know your best is good enough to win. Like, otherwise we wouldn't push you as hard. We wouldn't
Sure.
put all this in it if you couldn't do as good as, we believe you can. So there's always that bit of pressure, really just to perform my best. And I think a little bit of that desire to win was there too, because like, you can. It's right there. Like if you ride your best, it's right there. My trainer would always say, just do the best that you can do. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
That was encouraging, especially there at the end of my amateur days.
Were you more motivated by fear or the pleasure of success? The fear of failure or the pleasure of success, in your opinion?
I think like emotions, it differs a lot. I think some races you would chase that pleasure of success, especially if you haven't felt it for a while. Like um, as most motocrossers know, like you almost chase that adrenaline high. It's addictive to ride a dirt bike because it's dangerous, and um, I feel like in a way it draws you a lot closer to God. As far as it just takes you out of your own world. Like you have to be fully in the moment when you're riding, and I think there's just a lot to say about chasing that adrenaline and that perfect race versus, I know a lot of times, and a lot of people say it like, oh, winning is everything in the sport, but sometimes just the best lap was always better than a win, or you could win and still not be happy or satisfied, like, because then you go win again and again. Like chasing the win was never the finish line. It was more of just like a checkpoint, like, okay, next step, like how far can you go? um there are times when like you're afraid to lose, especially like at a big race when you need to perform. But that wasn't always the case. Like you get to a race and yeah, you don't want to lose, but I wouldn't say it was a healthy amount of fear not to lose. Like it was okay. It has that added accountability. The fear added that accountability, but the pleasure of winning wasn't everything. It was more just how can I do my best? Like how can I race and just perform and cross all the T's and dot all the I's is something my dad would say often. And that was kind of my thought process going to the races. Like, how can I just click it off perfectly? And if not, how can I rebound? Or you're always just chasing that little bit more.
If you don't mind me asking, Caden, how old are you this year?
21.
So, with you going out on your own at 15, and then the way that you just articulated that winning isn't everything, it's, putting it all together, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. At what age would you have been able to teach that to a younger generation between 15 and 21? When did that education, that epiphany, that the knowledge that you just shared, when would that have been in your head?
It's more of a value I think my family passed down and my trainer.
Mm.
Um, like I can't say that I would have been able to pronunciate it or teach it to somebody else. I wouldn't have been able to put it into words, but that was the way I was raised and trained was more like winning isn't like it's not an end to itself, but a means to get um like it's a goal, it's a stop post. And that was just something they taught, like, yeah, you won, but don't get too proud because of it. Or yeah, you lost, but don't hang your head too low. Like keep your head up. It's just a stop in the journey.
You mentioned earlier, it's kind of like a myriad of emotions. Sometimes it's not losing, sometimes it's wanting to win. When you look at the sport that we live in, where you're only as good as your last win, and yet you're raised in an environment where, sure, your parents want to see you raise to your potential. You yourself, obviously, you're not being arrogant. I'll say it for you. You're extremely talented on a dirt bike. You accomplished a tremendous amount at an early age. How do you balance at home? You're being raised in an environment where, as long as the effort is there, we understand that you want to win, but we can't win all the races. And then in an industry where you're only as good as your last win or your last race, how did you handle that dichotomy of emotions?
It was a lot. It was a roller coaster ride. I mean, I can tell you stories upon stories of that where you want to win so bad, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes it might be a bike problem or a rider. Most of the time it's a rider error. Everybody likes to blame the bike, but looking back 95% of the time it's a rider error, like a brain fart. There's no excuses to make, and I think that was also a hard pill to swallow, but it added to the character development, which is a big reason I think my family kept pursuing it. Was they saw that it was good for my character. It gave me a different education than they had, and I think they liked that aspect. As far as, man, it just brings out the brutal honesty at a rapid pace. Ultimately, it was more so riding those highs and lows gave you just better relationships with your friends and family, like, because you're surviving the highs and lows together. When you win, when you lose. um, there towards the end of the career, we chalked it up to a circus act. Like, we are the performers, and you can see that more than ever. And at any of the stages, like, it seriously is an entertainment um division, as far as, sports, and whether you're football, baseball, or motocross. I think your goal is to entertain the fans, and for us, it was how do we build good relationships with the people around, um, and still, perform.
Sure. What year did you win Loretta's?
Well, sorry,
What year? No, that's okay, bud. What year did you win Loretta's?
I won Loretta's the first time in 2018, the mini senior two division, and then the second time I won it was in 2021 in schoolboy two, and then I won my last year there in 2022.
And that was in the pro sport class?
It was, yes, sir. I have almost as many second places as Bill Lapoto. One of my rivals growing up was Jet Reynolds, and year after year, I was just so close to winning. We would move up early in the divisions because, we were after more. We'd stay racing together. Our parents were good friends. We were good friends. We'd fish together at the river. Like, it was like, that was probably my best friend growing up, and or one of them. And so we would always race together. And man, if he wouldn't just get the upper hand on me by a little bit there at Loretta's, or even some of the spring nationals, but we were always just close enough to where it was like, okay, we'll keep moving up together, keep racing together. Like, it's just making us both better. And so at Loretta's, I have more second places than I'd like to talk about, and a few thirds, just from really difficult years. I think those were more developing than those wins, but the wins were very sweet. Um,
Sure.
it really gave me an understanding of how sweet a win can be when you're just so close so many years.
In that year that you won pro sport, were you already signed to a pro contract?
I was not, actually. Now we joke about it, but I wasn't joking about it at the time. I tell my dad, I said, um, I had some cowboy boots, some work boots, and it's an ongoing joke that at the beginning of the week, I said, I'm not wearing my cowboy boots. So I'm not wearing my work boots, Pop. I said, I don't want to do it. I said, but I got them, and I ain't scared, but I don't want to use them. And then after that, we still didn't have a ride. Like, they're all taken, and most of them were filled by injured riders. That the teams keep on. And so that was really frustrating. Like, hey, we won the pinnacle amateur race of the sport. And the year before, I'd had a great year, great showing at all the amateur races, and then winning Loretta's. The next year, I stayed hurt, for most of the year, but then was still able to bounce back and win pretty dominantly. And so it was a big punch in the gut, because it wasn't then about results, but more about relationships in the moto division. You see a lot of the West Coast gets favoritism because they're close to the factories. They build those relationships. And then the East Coast, which is now changing with the Star and PRMX, and there's so many teams down East Coast now. So that was just a big punch in the gut, not having a ride after that, because You kind of grow up your whole amateur career believing that you win these races and you get sponsors. Like that's the lie they tell.
And how old were you when you won that pro sport class that year at Loretta's?
I was 19, 18.
So
Yeah, 18.
so here you are winning in the 85 class. You continue to persevere, overcome injuries, come back 17, 18, 19. You win the most difficult division in the at Loretta's, I should say it that way. How did you handle that disappointment as an individual at such a young age?
I just clung to my faith, I think, more than ever. Um, because it was tough. You build your identity around the sport, around these accomplishments, and you get there and you realize that it doesn't matter what you do, it matters what they think. And so, like more than ever, I just clung hard to my faith. And my parents fought hard for me. My dad was on the phone constantly, like, man, my boy did this. What's going on? And I had a lot of good sponsors also fighting for me. I was with TLD for over 7 years, and they were fighting hard for me, as far as wanting me or trying to find somebody else to give me a chance. Then whatever may come. There was still a lot of, because I came out of the woodworks on that, or at least into the team's eye out of the woodworks. It was more, let's see more of what he can do, before we sign him or whatever we're gonna do. So that that led me a lot closer to Jesus. That whole experience ultimately was just another chip in the character development.
Absolutely. Take me back to when you won in the 85 class there. Did you get any extra support after that win in the 85 class?
Nope, actually got told that it was a tough sport.
Mm.
So I won Loretta's in the 85 class.
And what year was that and how old were you?
2018. So that was a really big year. Uh, I moved down south. I was 14, almost 15. And I moved down south and was training with a family friend and his son
Mhm.
on a farm. So we, train all day, and we go to swim practice in the morning at 6 a.m. And, 14, 15 years old, you don't want to get up out of bed in the morning. Like, so that taught me a lot of work ethic, just being down there. And we'd hunt and fish. Like, we were just good old country boys down there. We did some of the amateur races, which was really cool. We did pretty good that year. We were on my own deal. I had Greg Link doing the motors on the little KTM 85s. It was the year they came out with the newer ones. I know that was a real big deal. Um, and it's just crazy story. So we go to Loretta's after my dad that year was like, okay, before Loretta's, we're going to go on a road trip, and we're going to hit up all these different spots. We're going to get exposure. We're going to talk to all these people. Like, we're going to go build relationships. Like he, he's like, we're going to do it all in, son. I see how hard you're working. I'm working just as hard. I'll match your work ethic. I'll always put in my 120 for you, son. And so we go around, we go ride up at Club MX, we go ride, MX 420, like just all these different tracks up the East Coast. And on our way to Loretta's, get to Loretta's, wild week, crashed in the first turn, on the first race, destroy my subframe. I come back to the lead. It's like a kind of a mud race. I come back and I'm winning. I get taken out by a lapper who's like cleaning his bike off and gets back on the track. And so I go back to like 7th, and then I go 2-1 in the next 2 motos, but Lowrider D got that one, and then the mini senior I went 1-1-2. And so it was just a truly wild week of racing. Patching that bike together. At the beginning of the week, I had a brand new bike, but I had been riding dang near 90-hour practice bike all year. I told my dad, I said, I don't want to ride the new bike. I don't like it. It doesn't feel the same. And so he put me on the practice bike, and that's what I won Loretta's on. And then afterwards, I had gotten picked because a few riders had dropped out or gotten hurt to go race the world championship in it was located in Australia that year, but I got picked to do that. And I told my dad, I said, I don't want to go. If y'all can't come, because my mom was getting ready to have my youngest sibling, Riker, He just turned 6 now, so there's a big age gap there. And so I was like, I don't really want to go without y'all. I don't really want to go. Like, all the way to Australia? No thanks. And he's like, so when you're my age and you're sitting at the bar with your friends, you will have the coolest story to tell them that you raced for your country when you were 14 years old. And so we went after a 2-week cruise with my friend, celebrating Loretta's win. We went swimming every day. I mean, my hands were like prunes every day. All my callus were gone. I'm out of shape. I'm eating ice cream every day, but I'm still young. And we fly out there. I fly with uh, one of the coolest dudes over there, Mr. Michael Burking, and he's looking after me, making sure I get to where I need to be. We have a 1-day layover, get stuck at LAX, and so like we missed a day of practice with the USA team. I show up late. We rent a bike out. We flew with the suspension, which we were scared was going to get compensated. Like they
Sure.
don't like you flying with suspension. And we show up and there's sheep out in the field. I ain't never really seen sheep. At least we have some cracker cows, but ain't got no sheep. There's sheep out there, and it was just a really crazy weekend. Definitely spirit filled, and um, I somehow managed to get P1 in qualifying over there. I'm racing like Kai DeWolf and Liam Everts. Like, I don't know who any of these guys are because I'm, from my little East Coast section in the US. I didn't look at much world racing, and they're telling me who they are, but like I'm still so caught up in the jet lag and the fact that we're all the way in Australia and we had like just flown in. Um, and then of course, like some of my favorite riders who my dad would take me to the fence to watch are, my teammates. And we got Max Miller, Aiden Tiero, Ryder. We'd watch Ryder too, even though I'd race him. And little Logan Bess and one of my good friends, he just got hurt. He was with us too. His dad owns the Mika Metals. I'm skipping his name right now. Enzo Temperman. Like that was our group that went that year. And so I topped the board in qualifying. We're all pumped, and then it rains hard that night. Coming off of Loretta's, which was, it's a tough sport. Like not everybody gets rides after winning. And so I'm like, I can't even say I'm salty at that point in time. I was just there to have fun.
Sure.
Like my dad said, like, I'm gonna have a cool story to tell whether I win or lose. Like I dang sure didn't want to embarrass my country. That's one of the reasons I didn't want to go. But ultimately I was like, I'm just gonna lay it all out. Like I'm gonna go have fun. And P1 and qualifying really didn't matter too much to me as far as it was just like, man, how crazy. Like it doesn't even make sense. Like it was a fever dream at a bit. The mechanics couldn't go with you to the gate because of the FIM rules.
Yep.
So we had like these grates that never started on grate before. Like didn't know. I picked my own gate. I picked like literally the worst gate on the box because I was the first gate pick. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have much direction. Like Mr. Michael was telling me where to go, and I just didn't listen. I was like, I like this one over here. So I learned my lesson, even though the start actually ended up being really good, which is crazy, being bigger at that time. I was 140 pounds on a big wheel 85. We were running pump gas out the old gas station in the back, and I pull a whole shot and I'm leading it, and I'm just, full blown freeze, heart rate not breathing. And I get my knee brace caught up because that was back when we had like webbing in our pants, like little mesh webbing. It gets all caught up in my knee brace. I had older knee braces. I was too stubborn to get them fixed. And so they get stuck. I get past. Everybody's hooting and hollering, and I'm just like, okay, let's breathe. Let's breathe. And I walk back up to the third and the first moto, and then the next moto is the next day. It's like you have all night to dwell on it. Like, hey, I was winning. Like, and then I fell back to third. I think I can do this.
Sure.
So the next day, I had a good gate pick, and I listened more on where I should go. And I come out the first corner and dead last. I get pinched off going into the first corner by my teammate, like who I was playing. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like, I'll follow him to the first corner. He gets pinched off. I get pinched off. He makes it through well. I'm dead last. And the song, just how a racer's mind works sometimes, at least mine. Call me crazy if you want, but another one bites the dust. I'm just bump, 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 and I'm just 1, 2, 3. I just going through every lap. Another one bites the dust. My endurance is pretty well for. I haven't spent the last 2 weeks on a cruise ship. We had 20-minute motos, and I got faster every single lap coming through traffic. And checkered flag flies, and I didn't know it at the time, but I had passed everybody. There wasn't no one else to pass. So that was how I won the world championship. And first thing I had to do was that food over there is really good. I had a movement going. It was time. So
Oh no.
I don't know if that helped me go faster or what was going on, but first thing I had to do was I had to go. My nervous system was on the edge on that one. But I think as far as memories in racing, like I have so many really good memories with friends, with family. Racing at Loretta's. I had my whole family come to Loretta's that last year because I also graduated high school with on track. So like I got to walk the stage. My whole family showed up. Um, but Australia is just one of those super special races that I don't think I'll ever forget. One that I refer back to is probably my favorite. And that race was the one that got me an Orange Brigade ride.
Okay.
So I'd been turned down at Loretta's from Orange Brigade. They're like, "Oh, it's a tough sport. Um, tough sport. Do better. Whatever." Just very shrugged off. And then after the Worlds, remember my dad saying, "Well, they can't deny you now, son. They can't deny you now," and they didn't.
Did you
So
get a multi-year deal?
signed with Orange Brigade. I got a 1-year deal.
1-year deal.
1 year tryout deal on Super Minis. We got one bike, paid taxes on it, which was a huge blessing. I mean, we're buying our own.
Sure.
And then we had people that we had to use. We had sponsors we had to put on the graphics. And it was really cool being a part of that. We had, summer camp before Loretta's every year. We'd go someplace cool, and we had Jason Wygant come and teach us how to do podium speeches. We'd count the ums and ands and so's. And he's like, "We want y'all to sound more educated. Like
Sure.
the sponsors want to hear a better speech. They don't want to hear They're like, we get it. You're coming off the track. You just exhausted yourself, but you need to speak right."
Yeah.
So we learned a lot at those camps. That was a really cool team to be a part of.
Yeah, I can only imagine. When you take all these different chapters, winning in the 85 class, winning in the schoolboy class, winning pro sport, it's easy for me to be, a spectator, a big fan of the sport, and go, wow, those are some pretty difficult, stages. Would you put one of those, all of those, if you look back at your career, even though you're still extremely young, what was the most difficult stage that most of us wouldn't even have a clue about?
It was all difficult. Each one was like its own little climb to try and get out of. You go into it thinking, "I don't think I'll ever get out of this," but then you climb the mountain and there's another one right up ahead. The toughest one, I think, mentally for me and physically was going pro and going to 3 different teams in the course of supercross and motocross. Going into SMX, that was the first year they did SMX, and I went through 3 different teams as my first year of pro racing. I think that was probably the most difficult, both mentally and physically, because your back's up against the wall. You're a rookie. You're trying to learn and grow and do your best, but at the same time, you're literally riding a new bike dang near every opening of a series, and learning new people, building these relationships, trying to be someone they want to keep around, someone who performs like. And then I'm on my own completely. Like, at least as an amateur, I still lived with my trainer and somebody familiar, and now I'm like completely on my own. I'm flying them out to at least come stay with me, so I have a little bit of friendship and trying to learn from. But the pressure was it was a lot, which looking back, I loved the pressure. Like, there's just nothing more refining than a good amount of pressure and being able to channel it. But the economy and where everything was, it was a really, really tricky year.
When you talk about pressure, for those who us who enjoy turning on the TV and just watching the gate drop and watching you guys rip, where did most of the pressure come from, and what shape, form, size?
Mostly from the people you put around you. Uh, I had good people around me, but it was a pretty stressful season trying to find a home, a place to grow like with the team and get better and get faster and start performing. So the pressure was there to like more in a stressful sense to get somewhere and stay there, like to to do good there. Um, and that was really the goal with TLD. Was I was a filling guy, but I mean that was growing up. That's always the team I wanted to ride for. I always thought they had the coolest gear and the coolest pit setup. Like they were the coolest people, and then having rode for them for 7 years as an amateur, wearing the gear and getting to go out there and spend time with them. Like I knew that was my moto family. Just really, really good people. But there was a lot going on there too, with different management, and like, they were stressed in their own right. All their riders were injured. I'm a filling guy. They hire a filling guy, a rookie, um, and I'm not performing the best. I'm getting 10ths and 12ths, and they need someone up there getting TV coverage, not just on the leaderboard in the second page. And so I think for me, I knew I wanted to stay there, but um, there's just a lot. There was a lot going on, and so I mean, nobody's fault. Just a weird time and economy. Everything was just up in the air, and then I came in like right at that time. Like a lot of the good racers that you see sticking around for a while. If you really look at when they came into the sport, their results the first couple of years. I remember Derek sending me like a text message of Tomac's first year results. Like he won the first race he did, but then he was 10th, 12th. Like, we had very similar results, and then it's just all. He's like, man, it's just where you're at in time right now. Like when you went pro, what's going on around where the economy was always big. I know I've said that a lot in the podcast, but really can't emphasize how big that is. Like where the bike sales are, if a team's making money or spending more than they're making, it's like they get tighter. And at the end of the day, it's a business for many people, even the riders. Like, yeah, you love riding your dirt bike, but when you go pro, it's a lot more than just that. And I think a lot of the stress came from that, um, wanting it to be a supporting job that I could raise a family on if I wanted to. I was still young, but that's where my parents and trainers' view was like, how do we get you where we know you can be successfully racing at the top? And so I think that was most of the stress, and it was healthy pressure. Like, Caden, you're almost 20 years old. Like, you're a grown man. You need to figure it out. You need to talk. Like, you gotta make it work just like you would in any other job. Like, you gotta show up and perform. Uh, and so like it was that healthy stress of just, hey, Caden, show up, perform, like do your job. It was a little bit different than amateurs. Uh, Amateur races are spread out a lot, and the pro races were every weekend. It's like you're in a new environment, new team, and you're not recovering the best. You're flying all over the country. Like there's a lot to say about that, and add an extra stress to it. Flying through the airport by yourself. At least the first few times was finding the terminals and running to your gate, showing up on time. That was learned in its own right.
You mentioned something that I think is always interesting. If you look at somebody's professional career, let's call it generically in the business world, usually there's some internship, there's some, you know, you do some shadowing for a while. Yeah, you might go to school and get a degree in, let's say, engineering, but then, usually you're under the tutelage of somebody. I Correct me if I'm wrong, you've been through it. I don't see anywhere in our sport where they're like, okay, for the next 2 years you're going to follow. You mentioned Villapoto earlier, okay, you get to follow Villapoto around for 2 years while you're still racing amateur, so you can kind of get the lay of how this works, how to navigate it all. It's you come right out of the amateur ranks, and literally sometimes you see guys racing Loretta's, and a week later, 2 weeks later, they're at an outdoor national, and it's a completely different playground. With that being said, what is more difficult in your opinion, navigating the amateur year to year or navigating the professional year to year? And for what would make them different?
Um, it's a long, tough question. At least kind of drawing blanks on it. Ultimately, like you figure out the amateur rut, you
Mm-hmm.
figure out the people in it. Like it's its own division of racing, uh, and they're trying. They really are pushing to incorporate like, the future and the way they do those little outdoor races. And those are cool. Like you get to spend time with those people. For for the most part, how how tend to be the only ones racing if there is that chance of, oh, you need 2 years of understudy before you go racing. I think the way they do it and the way they're trying to do it is probably the healthiest way. I mean, if a rider comes up and he's just knock your socks off, well, like Jet Lawrence coming over here and racing, like for him to have 2 years of understudy, you could have gotten him hurt or changed the whole directory of his career versus him being able just to pop in there and learn with hands-on experience. I think that's really important, but it's hard to get the chance to. I mean, there's only so many teams, and there's a lot of riders who are really good, and then just whoever's the best fit for that team and the way they want to run things seems to be the way it goes. They filter through till they find like their who they think is their perfect match. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think it's a beautiful idea in the sense of, man, it would be so cool, but there's a lot of hungry wolves out there who would take it as a big money grab. I think that's what's killing the sport ultimately is there's a lot of greedy people in it trying to grab money from even the riders. Like you hear a lot of people pay for their rides, and um it's tough. It's a tough economy. Like the sponsors can only throw in so much money because it's advertisement. Like you as a rider, your advertisement. The advertisement budget's only so big. They still have to travel. They still have to get the bikes. They still have to put them together. They have to hire people to do that. You're traveling all over the country. So at the end of the day, you're just advertisement. There's only so big of a budget for that. And I think that just it sucks the life out of the sport. You see a lot of people argue and complain about how Felt's destroying it or he's robbing the money from the sponsors who could be helping the riders and yeah, there's always two sides to the story though. There's always two sides. He's got a family to feed as well. He's got people to entertain. He's got stadiums to fill. I started doing a little bit of arena cross here lately. I do the Jeep T Arena motocross just for fun. It's near the school and some good people. Like it makes dirt bikes fun for me again. And their little circuit, like it's expensive to pay for one of those arenas for a weekend because there's a lot of people who want to pay for it. And it's even more expensive to turn a football arena into a dirt bike track. And so I think ultimately just there's not a whole lot of money in the sport. And then it's not perceived the best by no means. So when you talk about back to the 2 year understudy or even just amateurs getting more time acting like a pro or getting that experience and there's no money for them to go do that unless their daddies are rich
Right.
because who's going to pay for it? It's not the fans. I mean, the same with the women's racing. Like, man, women are really good on dirt bikes and they're fun to watch, but where's the money coming from to get them to the races?
Right. Exactly.
because there's only so many fans, and even these motorcycle, like they're only selling so many dirt bikes because in the big view of the eye of the world, like motocross is dangerous. And my always when you talk to strangers about dirt bikes, whether it's at Walmart or even at school, they always like, oh, so you ride like on the street?
Yeah.
You ride Harleys? And I'm like, man, those are cool too. And they're like, oh, those are so dangerous. They always got a horror story of their cousin or somebody they seen in a road crash. It's like, if that's the first idea people get when they think of dirt bikes,
Mm-hmm.
I think we can do a lot better on that, just promoting it in a way that's is more family friendly. I think in the West Coast it is viewed that way. The East Coast it's not. Yeah, it's probably mostly due to terrain. Hill country with trees and a lot of blind spots versus more open country and mountainous. But
Absolutely.
I think more than getting the amateurs to spend more time with the pros, which I don't think many people have money to do that, be better if we can't, tell our friends and family or get them out to the track and show them how to ride a dirt bike safer. We don't say safer on a dirt bike because there ain't nothing really safe about it, but
Mm-hmm.
how to ride one smarter and have fun on one. And I think ultimately just get that bit of wildness back in the ordinary day-to-day person.
Yeah. When you had that opportunity with Troy Lee, um, if I'm asking anything that's, confidential, please don't feel compelled to answer it. But did you have a certain performance criteria that if you were top 10, you'd be retained for the next weekend, the next year? What did that, because I want to go back to that subject of pressure. I think a lot of listeners don't understand. And I don't think I'm giving away any secrets here, but I've worked with some riders over the years that are on some B teams, and it's like, well, if I'm just going to use an even number, let's say there's 10 races. If you don't start at least 50 or 60% of those, you lose your salary or a significant chunk of it. So when someone's, got a compound fracture of the ankle and they're tucking it into a boot and the media gets a hold of it and says, yeah, XYZ rider was riding with a broken ankle, people sitting in the stands and at home go, that's kind of foolish. Why would you do that? Not realizing that you don't complete 50, 60% of the races, you don't get a salary or a significant pay cut. Was yours performance based that because obviously you're a fill-in, was that weekend to weekend or was that from like supercross to outdoors and then from year to year? How was that shaped up and what did the pressure look like in that regards?
I like the way you said that, don't have to answer if you don't want to. I appreciate that. I promise you I won't
Yep.
answer something if I think it would, get me in trouble with further rides or shot, make somebody look bad who really isn't. Uh, Ultimately, as far as the pressure goes from race to race, when I was on the fill-in, I originally had a four round fill-in until one of the riders got back, which at the time I think was Michael Mosman,
Okay.
who he had been hurt quite a bit throughout that last season. So yeah, he got a little pay cut because, and like we were talking about earlier, like it's advertising. Like if you're not up there advertising, like we're kind of just paying you to sit around, and no job's going to pay you to sit around. I mean, if it does, then man, a lot more people need that job, huh? Or they're trying to find it. One, everybody in college is trying to find one they can get paid to sit around. Um, no shame on that. Just you see it
Understood.
pretty often, and so mine wasn't. I mean, obviously, you don't need to go out there and get 25th because
Sure.
then you're making the bike look like that doesn't work as a a fill-in rider deal. Like, hey, we're hiring you on our bike, which they have a good bike, they have a good team, they have a good represent. Like they look good to the eye. They're advertisers. The people who are paying them money to put them spots on the bike. Like Sony, they're coming out with the Spider-Man movie. Like they wanted the Spider-Man movie seen by the TV. That's why they
Sure.
threw them advertising money. So yeah, there's that healthy pressure. Like, hey, you need to go do good. You're on a good bike. You're on a good team. Like we're expected to do good. And if you're gonna ride for us, you're expected to do good. So yeah, it's a healthy, you know, pressure, but there's 40 really fast dudes. Like those dudes aren't slow. And at different tracks, they go, faster than others. They've been doing it for 10, 15 years. A lot of people in the 250 and 450 class, they won championships. Like
Yep.
they're no joke. So you're racing up against these guys and you need to perform your best. You need to, they don't like to put a number on it. There's a lot of a lot of beat around the bush because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They want you to perform well, especially as a racer. Like they're not, my parents, my dad and my trainer were really good about telling me things point blank, which helped me. Because I mean, what's the point in wasting a bunch of time and, beating around the bush? But, for the most part, the teams, they wanted to keep the rider happy. They wanted to keep the rider feeling good. And so they would beat around the bush a little bit with certain subjects if they thought it might hurt the performance or right. Like they did everything they could to help me excel. Um,
Yeah.
and the thing I loved about the manager at the time I was there, Mr. Max Lee, is I had a standing relationship with him as a amateur, and so he wasn't scared to like tell me some things point blank, which just it helped ease my mind. Like what could he have meant by this? What could he have meant by that? Like you can overthink some of the small things when it's not told to you directly. And I was really thankful that he would just sometimes tell me directly, like, "Hey, Caden, you're 3 seconds off in practice. How can we do better? What needs to change? I'm watching you. It doesn't look like the bike. It looks like you're riding tight." Or, "Caden, I know you can do better. I see it in you. I see you riding stiff." And there's a little bit of forgiveness there too. Like, "Hey, I know you're a rookie. I know you never rode this track before, but we expect you to adapt." I think one moment in particular was uh, when I helped Ryder D up in practice. And I come back and they're like, "Caden, we're really proud of your character. Like, we love you for that. But you're sitting P18 in practice. Before you go help somebody else up, we really need you to get a good time." Because if it's really bad and stuck, like we didn't see it, obviously, like I didn't know if I was going over there checking on them or what, like when they first got back to the truck until, the video comes out. But they're like, "Okay, we need you to get a good time so you can get a better start. Like, we need you to adapt faster. Like, we need you to put the bike up front." And you had the opportunity, but instead you're checking on somebody else, which is cool. We love your character that you're doing that, but let's get a good time first. Let's send you out earlier in practice because I would typically wait till the back and I'd hop in with, behind Hunter Lawrence or RJ. And like, I knew they knew the track. And so I'd try to figure it out from then. And for me, that was kind of a stress breaker. And the only thing I would change now is I'd look for somebody who's more, has my riding style. Like Hunter, he was smooth, but he was little, so he could punch out of little corners. RJ was fast, but he didn't ride like me. So like I'm following his lines and yeah, I might be doing better in my qualifying, but I could have done even better if it was, following somebody more with my riding style and line choice, at least looking back on that. And so that was just we would meticulously go over practice, race, film, uh is all the little things that added so much to it on that team. And yeah, go back into pressure, like it was always there and it was always doing better, but I wasn't in it alone. And I think that was the best part about it was I wasn't in it alone. I had, the team, I had my trainer, I had my dad, and everybody was there with, the same idea of how do we get you to go around the track faster? How do we get you to perform better? How do we get you to work with it? And, my fault a bit. I was stubborn. As a racer, you're often stubborn. And for me, I was having a lot of people trying to tell me what to do. And a bit of me like rebelled. It was like, man, I know they're right, but I don't always want to say they're right. Like a little bit of that humanity that's in me was just, man, I want to figure it out. I want to win because I made a good decision, or I said, "Oh, I need to do this." So sometimes there was overthinking on my department just because I know they're right. It sounds like the most common answer, like that's how you go faster. But what if I did it like this? What if I did it like that? And so I said, instead of making y'all's mistakes, why don't I make some of my own? And that was just the young part of me. But for the most part, like at least especially early on in the rounds up till about Southwick, like I really strived and wanted to soak up everything they were saying. But when it got repetitive or I made a mistake because, I tried it or it just didn't go perfect. Um, there's a bit of me that was like, I want to try my way. And on it, you get a 4 to, I got extended to 8 rounds. Shot at something. You should probably listen to the people around you, not necessarily think you know it all. So, and there's a little bit of a fight with that. Like, at times it was just like, Caden, you know better.
Mm.
So I think ultimately the pressure was good and the people were good. The only thing that was really stressful was, looking back, the times I didn't listen and tried to do it on my own, because then they're like, we told you what to do and we know it would have, and even if it didn't work, like, we still told you to do it and you didn't do it. Like, so I think that was mostly, I think, what might have hurt it, or even if it didn't, that was the stressful moments, because the conviction was lying right there with it. Like, they told you what to do, you didn't do it, you didn't do well because you tried it your way, or even if you didn't do well trying it their way, you still at least tried it their way. And I think that was the most stressful moment. It's like, can you know better? Like, you don't get but so many opportunities, and you just threw away one, just threw away another one. So for me, that was mostly the issue.
With you being so hyper competitive, was it more frustrating that they were correct and you were wrong, or was it more frustrating that you were not correct? Strictly from your opinion, in your own head, what was more frustrating?
It's a little bit of a tongue twister. The
Because I love your determination. You call it stubbornness. I like it. You're trying to problem solve and you're trying to get better at that skill versus, like you said, the race is over and you're like, well, I did this wrong, but they told me not to do it. Was it more frustrating that they were correct, or was the fact that you weren't able to figure it out yourself? Again, you're having a parent teacher conference with yourself.
In the moment,
Yeah.
I think I was more upset in the result. I was more upset in the result, because I knew I was trying my best.
Yeah.
Like, I never came off the track once and was like, I didn't try my best. I was just trying my best the wrong way,
Mm.
or trying my best in a way that, was rebellious, stubborn. And I think a lot of that, like you said, is competitive nature. Like, you want to be right. You want to do it right. You want to win. Like, but at the same time, like, you're still winning if you do what somebody else says. Like, so taking a bit of humility on that. Um, I think at the time it was just, there's a fast paced life. Everything was moving real fast. There was a lot of mouths in my ear. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there just wasn't much time to filter it. And so I think for me, and not in an excusive way, just sometimes I was just like, man, I just need a breath.
Sure.
Like, I need a little time to, like, focus on one thing, focus on me. And so I think it was often me pushing towards what I thought was best versus what I probably knew was best, just to get that minute of, like, off my back.
Well, you said it earlier. Race Saturday night, catch your breath on Sunday. You're back to training on Monday, back in a plane on Friday, repeat on Saturday, rinse and repeat for. You went from 4 opportunities to 8. It, like you say, that's pretty fast paced. Because if I understand you correctly, was there any breaks in those 8 rounds, or were they all back to back?
I think we had one break before Red Bud,
Okay.
but I was sick the whole time. I developed Epstein-Barr because I don't know when to quit. Um, and so I stayed sick. I just lay at night and shiver and sweat. Um, I got sick over that week, so I didn't get to spend much time with the team or any of that. Like, I was just sick as a dog. And I think that was our only break. I mean, other than that, it was every weekend. And it'd be oftentimes, I mean, I just raced on Motrin, or raced on some type of cold and flu medicine, like, and then your body gets immune to that stuff. Like, it doesn't work as much.
Yep.
It's like I'm just sitting on the gate, my eyes are water, and I can't breathe.
Yeah.
Or I'm
Out of 8
coughing.
rounds, how many of those tracks had you never raced before? As in,
All of them.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Except for Red Bud. I had raced Red Bud, but it's not the same. They rip it deep. They give you add-ons. Um, And I rode Paula. Rode Paula in practice, but they prep it way different for the race. I mean, all those tracks are different.
That's where I just think it's so interesting for the listeners. And we have some very devout listeners that are kind enough to reach out to me. But, the idea of learning a new track every week and then traveling, like you said, very little recovery time, 8 weeks in a row, the grind is real. And then I'm always amazed at the idea that it's one thing for us to go to a track, we as a recreational rider, even, somebody who likes to race, but it's different when your career is dependent on the results and the results are dependent on how quickly you can learn a new track, but you're not coming in at 100%, whether it's physical and or mental, and then trying to set a bike up, which is completely different than last week. I like the way you described it. Everything comes at you at warp speed. It's pretty fast pace for sure. I guess the last question I'd have for you, and then I've got some rapid fire. We like to have some fun. Um, how did you handle the self doubt? Self doubt to me is something that we all deal with it. We all deal with it differently. Just out of curiosity, how did you deal with doubt?
I was blessed to be around good people, and so I take it to them. I mean, mostly faith.
Yeah.
And you gotta have faith in something, otherwise, what's the point? So mostly faith, taking it to the Lord, but also, you know, I had a really good relationship with my trainer, a really good relationship with my dad, and even though they were chirping in my ear, trying to get me better, and there were times where we didn't talk, just because I needed a break. Still, when I'd struggle, I'd go to them, and then they'd just reassure me. I was always more on the lower confidence side as far as a racer. I I didn't quite give myself enough credit, but I almost strived on that. Like times you feel like the underdog or whatever. Like then you're not as crushed as bad when you don't win. But I think with them in my corner, I was able to go to them when I was feeling underprepared, and they would you know problem solve with me and tell me the things that I was doing right, or just getting out of that negative headspace. And I think that's important in life in general. There's been a lot of times, since I stopped racing and pursued school, where I've talked with them over just everyday life issues when it comes to, man, I don't know if I'm gonna get the job, or I don't know if, I'm doing this right or doing that right, and then just being able to talk to them and then be like, well, what are you doing right? And really switch that view. Um, that was a big saving grace in the sport at the time, because everything was coming out fast, and to be able to still have a positive view, or have them point me back in the right direction when I'd turn around, and then be like, hey, brother, repent, turn back around.
Mm,
It was helpful. That's how I dealt with that.
that makes sense. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing. And like I said, our listeners, they really give me a lot of feedback in regards to people like yourself who they have the utmost respect for. We never get a chance to understand what is the methodology, what are the resources to help you pull through. So I really appreciate you sharing that. We like to do some rapid questions. You ready for some fun?
I am.
All right. So anything that comes to mind, and there's no right or wrong answers, obviously. If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
It would say, warning, stubborn and crazy.
I like the theme of stubborn. I love that. I love it because you're humble as all get out. Most people wouldn't think that you'd be stubborn, but I like that you're set in your way. What's the last song you listened to?
King's Kaleidoscope has a song. Oh my goodness. I can't remember the name, but it is phenomenal. It's on the intro to a podcast I had to listen to for school called What Happened to Mars Hill.
Okay, nice. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I've received a lot of good advice. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to get that one.
Not just one.
Not just one on that.
Fair enough. Any bucket list items on your to-do list here? Like, if you took a list of your bucket list items, are any of them on the immediate about to get accomplished here in the next week?
Man, I redefined bucket list. So that's a different that's a different talk. I don't have a bucket list no more. I let the Lord lead my steps, and
And
He is my bucket list on that. I used to, but not no more. He's my bucket list.
That's fair. No, in total respect in that regards. What's your favorite dessert?
Definitely pumpkin pie. No questions there. Like no doubts.
With ice cream or whipped cream or neither?
Neither. Just a warm, good pumpkin pie. Could be cold, could be warm. Just pumpkin pie.
Now, do you save it just for Thanksgiving or do you enjoy it a couple times during the year as well?
Yeah, Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Okay. Makes that season even that much sweeter, doesn't it?
And my mom makes some blueberry cobbler too, which was off. Those were off the table when I was racing. So
Yep.
some splurge since.
There you go. Do you consider yourself an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird for sure. But with the arena cross, like you have to be more of a night owl because you race at night. But I love getting things done in the morning, and then lunchtime comes around. And you're like, I've had a great day. Like I wake up in the morning just pumped, like stoked that the Lord gave me another day. Coffee's running, like I'm pumped in the mornings. After you read, I'm
go.
Yeah.
A last question for you. In your opinion, who's the most important person in your phone?
I have a mom and a dad and a family friend. I can't answer that one. That'd be biased.
Okay.
But the first person I'll call that I know will pick up is my dad.
Fair.
If I'm ever in trouble. My mom, I love her to death. She
Yep.
doesn't answer the phone most of the time.
There you go. Is there on the subject of phone, is there anybody you'd like to have the phone number of in the world?
I got everybody's phone number I want. I mean, if anybody wants to talk to me, I'm more than open to it.
I love it.
I don't exactly give out my phone number, but I love to talk to people and I love to get to know people. So, and ultimately, I guess everybody's, but that's more just the people person in me.
No, that's perfect. Well, brother, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you allowing our listeners to get a better understanding of who Caden Braswell is, what he's been through, and best of luck out there on the Read Across series. I'll let you have the last word. Anybody you want to thank? Anybody you want to mention? No pressure. Just give you the last word, brother.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Robb. Heard a lot of good things about you. And so this was just awesome. Finally getting to meet you. I haven't gotten to meet you in person, but through the podcast, I'm getting to pick your brain a little bit, just to see your eyes and what you think about just the subjects we're talking about. I'd like to thank HP Motors. He's always been like one of my most trusted friends and people to work on my motors. Just always done stellar work for me. He's just a stellar person. I'd like to thank my parents for the sacrifices that they made and in the relationships that we have. The teams that I got to ride for, TLV, Phoenix, and HBI. No matter how it went, like it was still good to getting to know them and the things that I learned from them. And then obviously just close it out with thanking the good Lord and all the wonderful things that he's doing for everybody and the redemption that is coming in Jesus.
I love it. Well, on behalf of myself, everybody here at the Coach Robb Podcast Network, I really appreciate your time. You're a very humble man, fierce competitor, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you. For all of our listeners and subscribers, thank you for the kind words. Spread the word of the podcast. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you next month. Be safe.
Meet the Guest. Next Chapter. Part of the Coach Robb Podcast Network.